Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Saturday Anything Goes series. Thought we'd do continue on with kind of our fun fold theme that we've had going on the past few times, and was perusing YouTube and saw a beautiful easel card that I thought we'd go ahead and take a shot at. And I've already made one. Let me just tip this up so that you can see it better. This was using our Sitting Pretty stamp and die set. And as you can see, it is an easel, so there's room right there for you to go ahead and write your sentiment on. And then it has a lot of little pieces and parts as far as cuts of cardstock, cuts of DSP, and the overall construction itself, as you can see, is a little bit different than what we're used to doing for many of our fun fold cards, but it's not difficult at all. So I thought we would just go ahead and give this a try. Since June is upon us, though, that's wedding month, I thought we would go ahead and make a wedding card. So let's have some fun with it. I'll take and put this one out of the way. And I went ahead and made a template. This was the easiest way I found to go ahead and make sure I was doing all of my scoring and all of my cutting correctly. And it's kind of hard to see because it's in pencil, but you know me, I write in pencil because I erase a lot. But what we're going to start with is a piece of Whisper White that measures 12 by 5.5. And then we're going to make several score marks. We have one at 3 3/4. And then we're only scoring in 1 inch from each side at the 6 7/8 inch area. Again, at the 10 and the 11, we're going to repeat scoring in 1 inch on either side, because we need to go ahead and cut that, which is what then gives us our nice little easel area with the added interest of your side panels. Okay, so it's not going to be difficult. We just need to walk through the measurements. So I'm going to keep this one up here where I can see it. And what we're going to be using today is a different stamp and die set, since, like I said, we're going to be doing a wedding one. Let me pull that out for you. And that is our Serene Garden. I just fell in love with this the first time that I saw it. So we're going to be using this stamp, and that'll be for the center portion of our pop-up easel. And then we're also going to be using the flowers and the butterfly. For our sentiment, I'm going to take that from one of the stamp sets that is returning this year. That's Beautiful Bouquet. I was so happy to see that this was staying in there, but it has a really pretty sentiment that says Happy Wedding Day. So we'll go ahead and use that. And then one other thing, rather than the DSP, let me pull the card back in. Rather than working with DSP like you see here, I decided that to spiff it up a bit, make it look really wedding ready, that instead of cardstock mats, I was going to use champagne foil. And instead of DSP, I was going to use embossed Whisper White. And the embossing folder that I chose was our Petal Burst one. I think it's going to look really pretty. And I've already gone ahead and done the embossing and a bit of the stamping and die cutting ahead of time, because I really wanted us to spend more time on the actual construction of the card, the different scores and cuts that you need to make. So I have here already cut, if I can pull it out, a piece of Whisper White that is 12 by 5.5. And let me just pull out my handy dandy trimmer. because the first thing we're going to do is make that score line. And let me just pull that in here for you. We're going to make this score line at 3 3/4 inches. So I'll make sure my cutting blade is at the bottom. Move this to 3 3/4, and then give it a good score. I usually run my blade up and down 3 times to make sure I get a good score. And now our next one, this is where we start getting into the fancy measurements. We're going to move down to 6 7/8. Guess I should pull my arm out for this, huh? Make sure I stay as much in screen as possible. So 6 7/8, which is right here. But instead of scoring all the way down, I want an inch on either side. And what that works out to be is I'm going to score down an inch, lift up my scoring blade, and then come down to the 6 7/8 inch mark. I'm sorry, is that right? 4 1/2, duh. Come down to the 4 1/2 inch mark on my ruler here and score the rest of the way down. So let's do that. I'm at 6 7/8. I'm going to actually pick up my little ruler holder here, go down to the 1 inch mark, and just score a couple of times. All right, now our next score is going to be at 4 1/2. So again, I'm just picking this up, bringing my scoring blade to 4 1/2, and then I'll score a couple of times, 3 times. There we go. All right. And I don't know if you can see it here, but there is our score line right there and right there. So we've left the middle section unscored. We're going to repeat that at 10 inches. So I'll pull this down to 10. I'm going to come down to the 1 inch and score up and down. Lift, come down to 4 1/2 inches and score. And then our last score line is at 11 inches, and we're going to repeat exactly the same thing. Score down to 1. Lift, come down to 4 1/2, and score to the bottom. Okay, so that's all of our scoring done, with the exception of this center score line here. But I found that it was actually easier to score that once I had made my cuts. So I'm going to make my cuts first and then finish with that last score line. That way I can ensure that I'm not going over. Although it really wouldn't matter, you're going to cover up these side panels. You could, well, I guess we could do that. Let's do that. So let's go to our 7 7/8 mark right there. And if you want to go ahead and finish up your scoring for this, we don't want to start at the top. We want to come down to the 1 inch mark on our ruler. So I've lifted and brought it to 1 inch. And now we're going to score down to the 4 1/2 inch mark. So there's my 4 1/2 right there. So you're scoring between 1 inches and 4 1/2 inches. Okay, now that's all the scoring. Now we're ready to do our cutting. And for that, we are going to cut between the first score line up here and the last score line, which works out to be 6 7/8 to the 11 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this to where all my score marks at 11, 10, and 6 7/8 are going to be at the bottom. And then I want to come in 1 inch from either side, because remember, we've got an inch scored already. Let's see if I can pull this up. We already have an inch scored in here, here, and up here. So we want to make sure that we're lining our paper up at the 1 inch mark on the right. I'm going to pull my cutting blade up, and this we want to cut from 6 7/8 down to the 11 inches. So there's my 6 7/8 right there on my guide. And I'm going to come down, and I always put my finger there just to make sure I don't cut all the way to the bottom. So we're going to cut between 6 7/8 all the way down to the 11-inch mark. Okay. How do I cut the other side? Again, I'm going to pull this all the way over to the 1-inch mark, this time on the left-hand side. Take this back up to 6 7/8. Lay down my guide, and I'm going to cut down to the score line that's at 11 inches. So right to there. And there we have our cuts. And that's it for our scoring and our cutting. So we can put our trimmer away. And now let's go ahead and fold it. Now folding this, what you're going to notice is at your 3 3/4, you're going to have a mountain. And then at the 6 7/8 score lines, you're going to have a valley. Hang on. I have to do it backwards. So, yep, you're going to have a mountain, a mountain. A valley is going to be at the 10-inch, and then a mountain at the 11-inch. So there's only one score that we're going to fold the opposite direction. Okay? Clear as mud, right? And I always keep my sample there just so I can see it. So this one is going to be my mountain fold. And we'll give that a good burnish. And we'll probably come back and burnish this again as we work more with it. And then this is going to be our score marks right here. That also is a mountain. I'm simply going to fold it back and pinch it for the moment, just to get that going. We'll come back and burnish that later. Our 10-inch mark is a valley, and again, I'm going to press in with my finger and just pinch on the back side. Doesn't have to be a big pinch. And then our last score line at 11 pinches down. Now, if we've done this right, oh, and our middle score line between the two cut marks is also a mountain fold. So if we've done it right, there you go. That's what it's going to look like. To burnish this, I'm going to lay all of this flat now that I've pinched it, and I can come back and give all of those score lines a good burnish. Just like that. And like I say, I'm probably going to burnish this one again simply because that will help it stand up better. So let me just do that while I'm thinking of it. And that's the basic layout for the base of our easel card. Not difficult at all. Again, make yourself a template like I did. And that way you can just have it in front of you so that you'll know where your score and cut marks are, as well as which way to fold your scored lines. All right, I can put this out of the way now. Put that in my file right back there. And we're ready to start decorating. Our easel will stand up once we get our sentiment panels going to go down here, and that will help stop this so that our easel is standing up. But let's talk about the pieces that we'll need to decorate this. So we're going to need, obviously, our center panel. And I went ahead and stamped this using that beautiful stamp from Serene Garden. And let me think, what ink did I use? I used Granny Apple Green. It's just such a fresh, spring color. My other colors that I use, for instance, for my flowers, I use pink Pirhouette, which I know is retiring, so you certainly could use petal pink or blushing bride, although I found that to be a little too warm for my taste. And then we'll have a butterfly on this that I used balmy blue for. All my colors are very, what I call clean colors. So they're very cool, but they go really well with white. And they're true tones, I guess is what I meant to say. All right, so let's talk about, we're going to mat on foil, like I mentioned. And first of all, our design panel here measures 3 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Our mat for the design panel is out of champagne foil, measures 3 1/8 by 4 inches. I just wanted a little border around it. I don't want the foil to really stand out too much on this because I wanted the concentration to be on the stamped and embossed images. So that's what our design panel is going to look like, and it's going to sit right there. I'll pull that up so you can see it. So it's going to sit right there with a nice border of Whisper White around it. Okay, other pieces we're going to need for our sentiment panel. We have a piece of champagne foil that measures 3 1/8 by 1 1/2. And then, of course, we'll need a piece of Whisper White, and this is not embossed, to stamp our sentiment on. And this measures 2 7/8 by 1 7/8. Again, leaving me just a bit of a border around the whole thing. And we'll pop that up on dimensionals. That will help it provide that stop that we need. We'll need 2 pieces for our side panels. They go just like that. And these are 7/8 by 2 3/4 inches. And we'll need 2 more foil pieces that are for this area down here on either side of the design panel. And these measure 7/8 of an inch square. I did embossing, as I mentioned, on Whisper White using the petal burst. And I did that because, again, I really want the focus to be on that design panel. But we did need something for the side panels, and I thought if I did just a really pretty embossed Whisper White against that champagne foil, it gives it just the perfect frame for around that design panel. So you'll need 2 pieces of Whisper White that have been embossed, and these measure, where are we? 3/4. Is that 3/4? No. Let me see. 3/4 by 2 5/8. And like I said, those are going to work with our foil perfectly. So we've got 2 of those. And then for our itty bitties, which will be matted on the square, can't hardly hold them, they're so small, just like that, which will go right here. The embossed pieces are 3/4 of an inch square. So whereas our champagne foil is 7/8, this is 3/4. Just gives us that thin border. So those are all of the mats that we're going to use and the coordinating pieces that go with it. We'll also, like I said, have some die cuts, which I'll show you in a minute. But what do you say when we start putting this bad boy together? I already, like I mentioned, stamped the stamp from Serene Garden in the Granny Apple Green. I'm going to go ahead and flush mount it using some multi-purpose liquid glue. You want a strong glue for this because that foil can be very slickery. Don't have to get too much, but Tombow is a nice strong glue. All right, so I've gone ahead and laid that down. I'm just going to hold it in place for a moment. Like I said, because of the slick surface, you want to make sure you give it a moment to bind before you move it, or your panel could slip. So we've got that, and we're going to mount this right there. Now we may pop that up. We'll decide that in a moment. I'm not going to work on the sentiment panel yet, but let's do our side panels. So I'll take the embossed strips and mount those onto the foil mats. It really was a pretty simple card to put together, put together once I had all of the measurements, the scoring, and the cutting done. It's a little intimidating the first time you do it, but when you see how well it works, I couldn't wait to do another one. All right, so we'll let that dry. Can't help but get glue on my fingers with these little bitty pieces, but I try not to get it on the foil because it does dull it down a little bit. And just hold that in place. And now we might as well do our little shorties. That piece does not look very square. I think I've got another one here I can use that's more square. Nope. Must be an optical illusion. I think it's just the embossing itself that makes it look like it's not quite square. All right, so there's one piece. Got a little glue at the top there, but I'll get that off later. And our last piece. Probably should be using my reverse tweezers to do this, but fingers are faster sometimes. Besides, not everybody has those reverse tweezers. If you haven't invested in a pair, boy, do I recommend them. They are great. Okay, let's go ahead and put our side panels onto the base. Again, I'm just going to use my Tombow for this. And you want to make sure that the top is lined up well. The bottom, not so important because it kind of gets hidden in the fold. Just make sure you've got that lined up. And now we'll do this one. Hi, Amy. Thanks for joining. Hope you're having a good afternoon. It is Saturday, right? Yep, it's Saturday. And the important thing here for me is I want to make sure that the tops are about the same height, just to make sure that it all lines up well. Got a couple little fuzzies here. Okay, so we've done that. I will wait to put these little pieces on until I actually get the sentiment strip down. So why don't we go ahead and work on that sentiment strip now. I've got the stamp already mounted. Happy wedding day. So we will be stamping it on here. And I thought, as far as what color I wanted to use for stamping, I really like for wedding cards, anniversary cards, really special occasion cards. I love to emboss with silver embossing powder, but I'm out of silver and my order hasn't come in yet. So I use my trusty second favorite, which is Smoky Slate ink. It looks very light gray and is a good second choice if you don't have any silver embossing powder. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my stamp. Pull this down a little so I can see better. Oops, got ink on my block, so I'm being very careful with this. I know we have another side to the paper, but I like doing it right the first time if I can. I'm using the lines on my grid paper to try and get this panel as straight as possible. Pardon me if the camera shakes a little. I might be bumping it with my head. I'm going to find about the midpoint and then just hold the stamp to paper for a count of 4 or 5. Make sure all of that wonderful ink transfers from the stamp onto the sentiment panel. Now, if you're not very confident about lining things up straight or making sure that you had enough ink on your stamp, certainly this would be a great time to use your Stamparatus. That way you could come back, and if it needed more ink, you could go ahead and do that. It's easier also to line up on your Stamparatus. But hey, we did a pretty good job with this, so I'm happy about it. Working out on the elliptical, huh? You're a better woman than I am, Amy. And I have quite a bit of room around here, but I'm going to be adding some little embellishments, so I'm not worried about all that white space. Make sure this is dry so I don't smudge. Also, remember, we can put rhinestones or artisan pearls, just about anything we want on this if we need to fill up any spaces. So let's go ahead and glue this down. Make sure I have it as straight and even as possible, since you're really going to see this. And there's our sentiment panel. Now our sentiment panel, we're going to attach it. Come on, fold. Like I said, I will probably come back and reinforce those folds, because once you start getting layers on there, it becomes a little bulky. But this, we're going to go ahead and set right there. Just like that. And then I have some little flowers to go on either side. And I still have room in here where I can go ahead and write a sentiment. Now, if you wanted to put a piece of Whisper White in there, you certainly could do that before you lay your sentiment panel down. I know a lot of folks really would think that that looks more finished than just having the card base. And why don't we go ahead and just do that? All right, so I'm going to cut a piece that is, we'll make it 5 1/4 by 3.5. So let me just cut this piece real quick. 5 1/4 by 3.5, right? Because since this is a wedding card, we definitely want it to look finished. What did I say that side measurement was? 3.5. Okay. You know the old saying, measure twice, cut once. All right, now that I have that, I can go ahead and, well, and I did that wrong. Did you guys see that? All right, what did I do here? I must not have cut it at the 3.5 mark. This side looks good. So we'll just cut it. Oh, I cut it at 4.5. Guess I'm used to making cards, right? Okay, this should be good. There we go. And you certainly could stamp on this if you like. For instance, if you wanted to put stamps up in the corners, and we have really pretty ones here. Let's just pull one out and do it real quick. It'll be fun. And I think I'll just use this corner leaf section. And we'll do it in the Granny Apple Green. I am just loving this stamp set so much. So I'm going to do right here. Looks good. And we'll do right here as well. Yep, that looks good. If you wanted to do an inside sentiment, you absolutely could do that as well. But with that outside sentiment, I think that leaving the inside blank to do your handwritten note works just fine. Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and glue this down. Make sure I've got it the right way. And that will make it look really nice inside. Okay. Now we're ready to glue down our sentiment strip. And we're going to put that right about there, but I want to make sure before I put it down that that's about the right spot. And I think that it is. I know I could bring it all the way to the edge if it didn't want to, if it was too upright. For instance, if it was all the way back here, that might not look good. But I think leaving just a little bit there will work just fine. And as I mentioned, we need to pop this up on dimensionals because it's got to, do I have dimensionals? Where are my dimensionals? It has to serve as our stopper. That's all right. I'll just cut some of the edges off of this, and that will work just fine. Never throw away the edges when you're done with a sheet of dimensionals. They come in so handy. Ah, my ego. So I've got two on the sides, which is good, but the center may bow in, and when that does that, your card could pop up. So you want to make sure that you also put some along the top and along the bottom, just to keep that from happening. Goodness, these things don't want to come loose from the paper. There we go. So I'm just going to do the center top and the center bottom. You don't have to go all the way across. I get a little stingy with my dimensionals sometimes, but this is not the place for that. All right. Peel these off. I need to get one of those little trash bins that I can keep on my desk. Okay, now before I stick this down, I want to line it up with the center of this, right? So that's another reason I want to make sure that it's going to be at the exact spot that I want. And I'm just going to lay it down lightly now that I know where I want it, and look to see if it needs any adjustment. It doesn't. So I put that there, and now you can see it keeps our easel open without any problem, as long as you don't tip it. If you're worried that pops open too much, you could use a double layer of dimensionals below the sentiment strip, but I think the one works just fine. Okay, now we'll go ahead and see if we want to pop up our design panel or if we want it to just be flush. And I think I want it to just be flush. If I pop it up, it runs the risk of running into my sentiment panel. So I'll go ahead and just use my Tombow here. I'm going to lay this down and line it up so that I have an even amount on all four sides. I'm liking the way this is turning out. So let me see if I can just pull it up so you can see. See how those embossed panels really are the perfect complement to the design panel without competing in any way. Okay, we are almost done. Now I'm ready to go ahead and put on my little squares here since my design panel is down. And you want to line it up with your side panels. And that really, putting those side panels on helps make that pretty easy. And then make sure that your tops are also lined up. Okay. Now comes the really fun part. In Serene Garden, I got the matching dies with that. By the way, this one, beautiful. It embosses, and it works best if you use the new Stampin' Up! Embossing mats. That's how you can get a really deep impression, although it works just fine without it as well. But I went ahead and die cut the flowers right there and the butterfly. So I stamped them out first, and let me show you. And I colored them in with the blends. And I did that ahead of time because coloring can take a little bit of time. So there's my butterfly. The other thing I did, y'all, let me bring back in this die set. I did go ahead and use this to emboss a piece of Whisper White. And once I'd done that, I went ahead and colored in the flowers on the embossed piece, and then I used the dies to cut them out. And that's what gives them this beautiful, I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's embossed. So it gives it some great shadow on it. I also made it very, very easy for me to color. But I did use pink Pirhouette for the coloring, both the light and the dark. And where are we going to put these? Well, first we're going to start with our design panel. And I have, come here. This is going to go here. This one is going to go here. And then, actually, this one's going to go here. And then I cut an extra one because, you know me, I like sets of 3. So those are going to go there. And then my butterfly is going to go right there. Okay. And because the flowers are embossed, I'm not going to pop them up. I'm just going to glue them straight down. The embossing helps puff them up. So it gives it lots of dimension already. Come on. But if you didn't emboss, if you just stamped and colored your flowers and then die cut them out, you certainly could pop them up with dimensionals to give them that extra bit of dimension. And while this one doesn't have the background stamp does not have the third flower, when I did the dry run, I decided it really needed a third flower there. Okay, so we've got that. My butterfly is not embossed, so I am going to go ahead and pop that up on dimensionals. Before I do, though, we need a little bit of Winkostella. Gotta have some Winkostella. A little bit of sparkle on a wedding card is definitely appropriate. And that I stamped with the Balmy Blue ink and then just die cut it out. And I've already got my mini dimensionals out. That's a good thing. So we'll go ahead and put a few on the butterfly. If I can get them to not stick to me. All right, so put one there, and one. Oops, see, I told you they stick to me like crazy. There we go. It is harder to peel off the backings on these. They don't want to let go sometimes. Just got to show them who's boss. Right, Amy? I am going to use my reverse tweezers for this because it's such a small image. And I do want to make sure my placement is good. Dadgummit, let go my ego. Don't stick. Okay. Now bring this over here and just decide where I want my butterfly to live. I think right there. So that's looking pretty good. And I really like that, but I thought, wow, looks really naked over here beside my sentiment. So what can I do to spiff that up? And I decided more flowers were in order. Now, one set I did the embossing on. That little. And the others are simply straight die cut, stamped, colored, and die cut. And I don't know that we'll use all three, but we may. Let me see what our placement looks like. Do I want two there or do I want just one there? What do you think? Or do I just want some on one side and use embellishments on the other? I mean, I really like the flower up there, but I almost think it's overkill with what's going on up here. Let me hold that up so you can see. I don't know. I think I like it. I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. What the heck? This, obviously, this embossed one, I'm not going to pop up. Just going to go ahead and lay it down right there. And then I think if I do all of them, I want the 2 for over there. But I think that's too much. So I think I'm just going to put this other set of 2 on the left-hand side. And I'm not going to pop it up since my sentiment panel is already popped up. So we'll just do that. All right. The last thing is to decide, are there any embellishments that we want to put on? Do we want rhinestones? Do we want white pearls, colored pearls? Or you can simply leave it the way it is if you like. It all is personal preference. I think I do want to do just a little bit of embellishing. Let me pull out my goodie tray here with all my new stuff. And let's see what we have that might work. So we have these faceted dots, but they're really not in the right colors. Definitely don't want glitter enamel dots. So that leaves us with rhinestones or artisan pearls we could use, or just regular pearls. So let's see. Rhinestones are pretty, but I love how clean this looks, how fresh. And I think rhinestones might be just a little too glitzy. I think I'm going to stick with pearls, but the question is, do I want white, or is white going to get lost amongst all the white we have going on? Whereas I certainly could use the artisan pearls, but I don't really have any in colors that work. I guess the light pink would work, but they're tiny, tiny. I think I'm going to go with, and I have a better set here that has the middle sizes. I think I'm going to go with pearls, but I think I'm going to color them with the pink Pirhouette, because I do want to keep that soft color going throughout the card. Okay, so I've got my pink Pirhouette light and dark. And my pokey tool. So I'm just going to color a few in each of the colors. So I'm using the dark pink Pirhouette on a small, medium, and large white pearl. And make sure if you're doing this, you go all the way down to the base. Otherwise, you tend to see a white ring at the bottom. And then I will try, oops, wants to fly away from me, and see if we get much of a color with the light pink Pirhouette. And we really don't get much color with it. So I think we'll probably just stick with the ones that are the dark. So the next question is, where do we want them? And as I mentioned, this side looks just a little bare to me. So I might want to take and put some there. Maybe a couple smaller ones up here. And do I have, let me do the teeny tinies. That way we can use lots of those. Because I do want to keep the accents small so they're not overpowering. So I'm just going to do a whole bunch. I'll do one whole row of those because I like the color. So for instance, I do want a little bit on here. So I'm going to put one there. I think I'll put one down here. And let's do one more. So we have our 3. And we'll do it in a triangular shape. So I like that for the design panel. Now as far as down here, I think we can get away with using the middle ones here. So we'll put one there. I think I'll put, do I want to do them all in a row, or do I want to space them out? You know what? I'm going to do a little pattern of them, right like that. And I think that's it. I could have put just a teeny tiny bow there if I wanted, but again, I don't want anything large enough that's going to take away from that gorgeous design panel. So there we have our wedding easel card. Look at how gorgeous that is. Pretty, pretty, pretty. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Hopefully you had a chance to take a screenshot of the template that I made. There are, like I said, lots of YouTube videos out there. I'll be uploading this one to YouTube probably tomorrow. The new Serene Garden stamp set and die set becomes available, next Friday, right? June 1st is when the new catalog goes live. And just a reminder, ordering will be down until noon, I believe they said, Mountain Time on the 1st, to give them the opportunity to update the ordering system with all the new stuff. Lots and lots of great stuff. I just can't wait. I know, Amy, your first order, Mr. Brown's probably going to have to bring a helper to deliver that one. And I won't be far behind you. Anyone else, if you do need to order supplies, please visit my blog, cardsbywinnie.wordpress.com. You can click on Shop Now in the upper right-hand corner, and it will take you directly to my ordering page. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend and a great Memorial Day. And remember, Memorial Day is not about barbecues. It's not about family get-togethers. Memorial Day is all about remembering those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. Bye-bye, y'all.